Joshua Blunt, will we see communities that have established a standing army? That's likely. I'm hoping that's the direction we go in the world of The Walking Dead, because we've gone on past survival in the apocalyptic world, and we have set up the communities. The next step is to go further and have, like, I don't know, like the medieval times, you know what I mean? That kind of vibe. So I think there is a possibility that they come across a big community that has a standing army. That would be pretty interesting, and then it would be interesting seeing them face something like that, because what would you do? They already fought and died for their community. Imagine a bigger one saying, okay, you guys are going to enter the fold, and, you know, we're going to rule over you. I just don't see that. I see a lot of conflict there. Ellis Aldridge, you're talking about seeing a Rick versus Negan showdown, and we already saw that, and I think it's getting to the point where we're past that. To go back into that now would kind of be pointless, in my opinion. If they did it down the line, that could be an interesting direction, depending on the direction they take. If, like, for example, depending on all the circumstances, for example, if Negan does redeem himself and then go off to, lead the Saviors again, or even become an ally with Rick, and that's a huge if, because there's a lot of forgiveness in there, and I'm sure Maggie would still try to kill him still, somehow, some way. I just don't see her being cool with that. Now we got to look into why would they fight again. Negan seems past trying to be the dictator. I don't know. That just seems like too big of a fail. Because first off, everyone's eyes are open now. The biggest thing that Rick did wasn't just defeating Negan. It was opening everyone's eyes. And those are even all the Saviors. They know now they don't have to live under the rule of someone like Negan. You know what I mean? It's kind of like defeating Negan was not the big victory. It was showing the Saviors, after Negan was defeated, that we could work together and we can have a better life than we did before. So I think it'd be damn near impossible for Negan to take over the Saviors again and convince them to go to war against Rick and the community. It just does not seem logical. I mean, I just don't see that happening. And a Rick versus Negan showdown, again, I just don't see that happening. I don't know what either one would get out of that. The only thing I would see is if Negan held a grudge and wanted to beat Rick's ass, But I do not think the story's going in that direction at all. Right now, anyhow. Tyler V, do you think The Walking Dead will eventually run out of interesting ideas? Yeah, I think everything is set up to potentially run out of interesting ideas. Again, depending on if new writers come along, depending on who owns the franchise. Look at Star Wars. Star Wars has the potential to run out of interesting ideas. But if you put it in the hands of new writers and, fresh minds, then it lasts a lot longer than if it was staying in the one particular person's mind. Now, I personally feel that Robert Kirkman is doing an amazing job keeping The Walking Dead fresh and interesting, and I think he's going to, and he has enough potential to continue that. However, it's very risky continuing the same path and the same story, because then readers will start to get bored of it. They'll be like, oh, here we go again. But Kirkman keeps, refreshing the page, so to speak, when it comes to The Walking Dead. And again, it's like it's going up, because they were living in the aftermath of a society that already crumbled. And they were living in that world for so long, they started going up, and it was around the time they hit Alexandria. That is when they started building. Here's a community there, and then they went even higher. Here's other communities, and then they went even bigger, where they had to rebel against the leader in this area. And now we got into a new beginning where they have all these communities working together, having roads and everything like that. The next big step seems to be, logically, to meet other bigger communities and other bigger issues and bigger problems, coming together, spreading the story out, just getting bigger. Now, if we dropped everything, if the Whispers, and this is another possibility, if the Whispers wiped out the entire, all the communities and left them going on the road again, then you risk reverting back to the original story of being on the road and surviving. And now you can actually get more interesting because you can have these characters go into parts of the world that are starting to grow over now. You know, the landscape changes, but you have to worry about the purpose and the story. What do they want? What are they trying to achieve? In the end, at the end of the day, they're only trying to find a new place to build up and live, because that's what humans do. And that's why I get annoyed when people say, oh, The Walking Dead is the same old story. When you sign on for a continuing story in the zombie apocalypse, what else did you expect it to be? There's only so many comics you can do of the same story where they're surviving, going from one place to the next. Eventually, realistically, the characters need to stop and rebuild, because it doesn't, I mean, that's what we do. We're humans. I mean, I don't see any other purpose. You either travel and just, live life until you die, or you settle down and make a community and everything. So, as far as running out of interesting ideas, there is still a well of awesome ideas, and I think that the best bet is to continue to go up with the making the story bigger and everything. NATO Pete. Wait, no, I messed that up. NATO Deaky. When Rick dies, who do you think will become the leader? I actually think this is a very important question, because Rick dying affects the world of The Walking Dead, because Rick is the leader, of the story. Maggie's the leader of the hilltop, but she's not the leader of the story. If Rick dies, we, the fans, would immediately assume Carl is the new main character in the story. Rick was two things. He was the leader and the main character. If Rick died, for us, we would think that Carl would be the main character, but he wouldn't be the leader. So now we go in an interesting direction where the main character isn't the leader. So this might actually go into the last question, which was how to keep this story interesting. If we went into Carl as the character, and let's say we followed him, Lydia dies, it's after the Whisperer story arc, Lydia's dead and Rick dies and Carl goes off on his own. If the story followed Carl in and around that area when he goes off on his journeys, we can check back into the old communities, or Carl can go off on his own for maybe 10-20 issues. I think it'd be crazy to do 10 issues. That'd be almost a whole year. And then if he comes back around in his travels to the communities and we see them in a different shape, Michonne's not there anymore. No one even knows where she is, or she's off doing her own thing. Maybe she even found another village by Oceanside and she's doing that, and Carl checks in on these, you know what I mean? It's different, interesting ways to bounce the story, but I think that's the most important thing. Rick being the main character and the leader. If Rick dies, the next leader of that area might not be our main character. So I want to know, for you out there, who would be your prime choice for the main character if Rick dies? And that's the biggest problem with killing off Rick Grimes. A lot of people forget, man, he is holding this story together in a huge way. If you look at it, just the structure of the world of The Walking Dead, how much he holds the story together. You get rid of that and now it's like the story's centered. You get rid of Rick Grimes, and now where do we go? Who do we focus on? You can do it. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying that is why it makes it risky killing off that main character. But anyway, Tyler Darr. Do you think Dwight will kill Negan? You know what? Right now, I don't think he has any reason to. I mean, they might go after each other, but I think Negan got over it, No, Negan should punch him in the face once and then call it quits. Or Negan might even be like, yeah, you know what? I f***ed your bitch and I burnt your face, so let's call it even. Extreme Mario plushies. If Negan found the Alexandria safe zone before the hilltop, what would have happened? Again, I don't like these what ifs. This accidentally slipped in here, but to be honest with you, I think it would. Glenn would be alive. At least Glenn wouldn't kill Negan. Negan wouldn't have killed Glenn. And Negan wouldn't have a reason to kill anyone else. So I think it would. I think Rick would have still resisted, and bad shit would have happened, but they'd probably still get to the same place that they are now. Bottom line. And the final question, Mike. How many issues do you see for The Walking Dead? Right now, countless. I stand by the same thing I believed when I first saw the very first episode. The Walking Dead will be in our entertainment for, my grandchildren to see, and that is truth. It'll either be in video games, it'll be with comic books, with movies, with TV shows. It will be something. It might even die off and go away for a few years, but it will return, just like Star Wars. The Walking Dead is a money-making beast from now until 100 years from now, and that's the truth. It doesn't get any easier to predict than that, Look, they remake shitty things, you know what I mean? The Walking Dead has a fighting chance to go on for for as long as it can. Different people doing it, different stories, different spin-offs, different tellings, but it has a long life ahead of it. But the comic alone, it might be countless. But with Kirkman doing it, he might only last another 10 years. I don't know, how long can you do a comic for? I'd like him to keep going as long as he can, but let's say I give Kirkman to issue 200, 250, maybe even 300 before he calls it quits. I'm going to say around 250. All right, guys, give me your thoughts and opinions down in that comment box. I'm done talking. It's your turn. Subscribe now.